So I was his assassin. But no one knew me. Only him. Only just Pablo.
You wouldn't have been able to. You had to be in the shadows.
I had to be in the shadows.
Yeah.
No one, there's no photos. It's nothing.
That's right.
Just me and Pablo.
You're just a shadow.
Pablo tells me to go kill this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Married a Brazilian, lived in Argentina, wrote a book about it right before I died.
How long did you make it?
80.
Wow.
Oh.
Lived a long life, had a bunch of kids, wrote a book about it. But everyone's dead. Gives a shit. Statute of limitations. I mean, not on murder, but dying. Who gives a shit?
Right. And you're 80. I mean, you've had a good run.
Dude, in that game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
Is a good run.
I mean, 80 might as well be 600. Yeah. That game.
Fucking Abraham.
Yeah.
You're Abraham status at that point.
Yeah.
All right. What do you want to do? You want to ask some of these questions?
I think we should. I think we should start off with some karaoke.
Although we can turn all that stuff down.
Well, wow. Let's do it.
All right.
Let's kick off.
You need a clapper?
Oh, yeah. We'll clap.
There you go. We got the clap in. That's for our producers to then understand that, like,
you're getting down to business.
Shit's getting real.
Ryan, we're getting down to business.
Yeah. So let's do introductions first. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
How's been your day?
My day's been well. I've had lots of presentations here at this conference and been talking a lot about reskilling the world, so I'm happy.
Well, you shocked me yesterday in the analyst deal. Y'all had studied skills for 7 years?
Mm.
What? Why? I mean,
what drove it?
Yeah. Like first of all, that was fantastic. I didn't know that. But what kick-started that bit? Like, how'd you get to that place?
So I started my career as a labor economist. I was part of a program in Canada called the Sector Council Program. And what was happening was in the early 2000s, Canada was forecasting net population decline.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way we were going to satisfy continued economic growth was by bringing in newcomers from around the world.
Right.
And bringing in newcomers into highly regulated occupations was a big, big problem, not only just from the regulated professions perspective, but even from the post-secondary education perspective. And so the Sector Council Program was established to bring together employers, government, and educators, to help solve the problems of mobility, not only just in terms of career and education, but also geographic mobility across provinces in Canada.
And if you're dealing with imports, you're dealing with immigrants. So now you've got another layer of cultural, language, some other stuff going on too.
Exactly. And a large part of the work that we were doing was these definitions of jobs and building out occupational profiles and skill taxonomies and ontologies. And I could see how problematic it was, and how long it was taking for us
to build.
I mean, it would be multiple years.
Oh, yeah.
So fast forward to 2016, I was running a company where I was a hired gun CEO, the world's largest water park company. So we built all the big water park and water ride attractions for... Thanks.
Yeah, that's fun.
Customers like Disney, Six Flags, Carnival Cruise Lines, Atlantis Resorts. And I was perfectly, obviously, happy doing that work.
Yes.
I was in Dubai for an extended period of time in 2016, and I attended a conference of the Young Presidents Organization, YPO.
Yeah.
And 10 o'clock in the morning at that conference on the first day, a group of Syrian women got on stage. They had escaped Syria during the civil conflict and were living in a refugee camp in Lebanon. And they spoke to us CEOs about the atrocities, the treatment of women during the Syrian crisis. And I just had a complete stream of consciousness where I wasn't, my expertise wasn't in medicine or humanitarian aid, but I did know labor economics. And I started to think about this notion of how could I help environments like that myself, and knowing that people having an understanding of their skills, knowing what they're empowered to do in the labor market, would be something that would maybe not solve big issues, but at least help people that were in need. That obviously then expanded to have me looking at the labor markets and the changes that were coming with the fourth industrial revolution. But that was the genesis.
My mentor in business school, Richard Shatton, created Cleveland Tomorrow. He was a regional economist. So he studied Northeast Ohio. So he brought together 50 of the top public, private CEOs, and you couldn't send somebody in your stead, nonprofits and government. So you had the entire city council, mayor, the whole bit, once a month, get together and talk about how do we make Cleveland, what's the problems. So everybody had a perspective, and you had the power in the room to actually fix it.
Yeah.
So he's the one that's schooled me on regional economics. Is like, that's what works for Northeast of Ohio. Okay. What works in Dallas or Fort Worth or whatever could be completely different.
Yeah. And what I was, so SkyHive was developed on this methodology that I call quantum labor analysis. And one of the questions that we were asked to address in this podcast was, well, you talk about skills not being skills for skills' sake or in isolation. And this is something that I want to dig into, because this notion of quantum labor analysis, I was starting to look at. In 2016, we would only see job level sort of views of a labor economy. And for the last 100 years of Adam Smith and Keynesian economics, including sort of org structure and design that matured with HR,
competency models,
we've been dealing with kind of the status quo.
Right.
And I didn't structure SkyHive as a technology company. It just so happened.
Oh, that's hilarious.
That technology would solve the problem. And what I did come across first was this notion of quantum labor analysis. And I was inspired by quantum physics and quantum mechanics, where if we take a system, let's say biology, for example, and we say, okay, well, we break the body down into organs down into cells down to the atomic level, we can now begin to see patterns in those systems that we could never see at the macro.
Right.
And so then I asked the question, well, how do I do that? And we were 6 months out, like just passed, from transformer models being invented in at Google X. And so that's the T in GPT for your listeners who might not recognize that. So we couldn't actually do anything like this 6 months before I had actually started developing Sky.
Timing. That's fantastic. Did you? I'm sorry, Rob.
I did, and we might dig into this later. Yesterday, when you were talking about, the question came to my mind, and I asked someone this earlier, but I think you're probably the better person to ask this to. How are we addressing the skills gap, the decay, but also the inflation of skills? How do we know when a skill is overhyped versus it's an actual skill that we need?
Yeah, I've got two great examples to share with you on this. So we're doing some work with a very prominent information communications technology consortium of the world's largest consultancies and technology companies, and we've specifically looked at the last 2 years of data on AI skills in ICT roles across about 50 roles, 50. And a great data point is to look at the demand for prompt engineering, where, first of all, we tend to think, well, in this industry, and we're close to technology, well, isn't everybody looking for prompt engineering? Well, the answer is no. A very small portion of the total complete world labor economy is looking for prompt engineering. And then when you zoom in even more, the demand for prompt engineering in software fell off a cliff in Q3 of last year. And what's actually taken its place is the demand for things like AI infrastructure, AI architecture, et cetera. And so to understand how, the trends are coming and going, it's exactly why, and I feel that at the time it was very counter to where the rest of the industry was going. I was fixated on collecting the world's labor market data.
Right.
Because I knew if I could see that in real time and I would have the time to trend it over time, that I could then begin to use the quantum labor analysis methodology to find those patterns. And remember at the time, you guys would know this, there are companies out there that are saying, well, we can tell you the skills you're going to need in 15 years.
Yeah. that was a analyst's guess at best.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now we have 7 years of data where we've seen consistently the emergence and decline of skills. What we've spent a lot of time on in let's call it the back room of the development of machine learning models are two very challenging models. One is proficiency. So how do you take proficiency in the absence of any sort of very specific assessment that involves human in the loop? And how do we do that in a way that's completely centered on responsible and ethical use of artificial intelligence? Number one. Number two is skill decay. So from the time a skill is taken, whether it's at an individual level or a community level, are we seeing active outputs of that skill and ongoing development, or are we seeing a declining skill? So no longer is it just, are we looking at supply and demand attributes and making the determination whether or not a skill is important, or is it becoming something that's actually quite different and niche and maybe morphing in terms of its definition, if that makes sense?
It seems like a flora and fauna metaphor of the forest, right? You've got things that pop up. They're there for a while. It's hot. It's extreme, and all of a sudden it dies, right? And then there's big giant trees that go on. They live for a long time. You have new little branches, stuff like that. And then again, you have some decay. There's parts of that tree that it's not needed anymore. And so that's the natural order, if you will, of things. True of animals as well. So what's your favorite metaphor for skills? Or do you have one?
So
not a blue whale. Don't do it.
So my favorite metaphor for skills is that each represent a pixel. And that pixel, the collection of those pixels represents a picture.
Ooh, I like that.
Right?
That's cool.
And so if I take, it's like putting two forests together. Well, if I take a person, that represents a certain set of pixels. If I take a group of people, not only does that add to the pixels,
right,
but it actually changes the pixels that are already there.
Right.
And then when you zoom out to the full picture, the tapestry that you can create, look, for an organization, let's say of 100,000 people, that's looking at 10% attrition year over year.
Oh, I love
that. Forest or that picture is changing constantly. And how do we make sure that we have a pixelated view of that?
And I think for the audience, when they're listening to that metaphor, they've been through 380 to 1080 to 720, thanks, 720 to 4K to 8K at Best Buy.
Right.
So they already kind of understand that, like, okay, this is same thing, but with skills.
Right.
I had a question around competency models, if you will. So did you study competency models at a point in all this journey?
I've dealt with competency models in more in my past. With SkyHive, we were very focused on letting the experts in at that time, the Cornerstone and others deal with competency models, because when you're trying to build big AI systems that are inferring things and you're doing that in a completely responsible and ethical way, there are certain things I would stay away from. One of them was competency models.
Right.
The other would be psychometric assessment.
Right. Yeah. I could see that. I've always wondered, I've never been able to get an IO psychologist to tell me. I wonder why it didn't, it was all the rage. Everyone, all the large companies have a competency models, consulting firms made a ton of money, et cetera. But it never seemed to go from recruiting all the way through. Like it got trapped somewhere. I don't know, probably talent development or something like that, or maybe even productivity. But I just didn't understand, because it was a cool model. Like the idea was cool. I just don't know why it didn't make it all the way through.
So about 2 years ago, I developed an internal white paper on the notion of looking at sentiment analysis to infer competency, to infer a whole host of things.
Right.
It's a very large undertaking.
Right.
And it's not one within the remit of then or now SkyHive that I would have undertaken.
And it's not a cut and copy, as to your point. What works at Toyota doesn't work at Mitsubishi.
Correct.
You'd have to actually make them. Each one of them would have to be organic.
Right. And these sentiment models that drive inference are super interesting, but also the horsepower required to get them there.
Right.
The juice may not be worth the squeeze.
Got it.
So I want to change paths maybe a little bit. One of the questions we like to ask a lot is your definition of work. How do you define work?
I guess I would say the provision of a product or service. I mean, the participation or active input to that output of a product or service. I mean, I think the definition of work is blurring and becoming more and more ambiguous as time goes by. I mean, even in our career, we're all probably around the same age. You know, our parents.
He's older.
We have the same birthday.
We do.
Just different years.
Just 10 years older.
A decade.
A decade. Well, it certainly doesn't. It doesn't look like.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Always liked you.
He just called me old.
You know, you kind of look old.
Our parents were the 50-year career, 40-year career, gold watch.
Get your pension.
So think about that, right? Only one generation.
Boom.
And all of a sudden, boom. And then when we look at our kids, I mean, I can't even imagine what a career. Yeah. Well, I guess I can imagine, but you know, I can't. Experience that would be very different, and that's only 2 generations.
Yeah,
that's not that far. Like you can go back to Old West, 2 generations, 3 generations. Not much is different.
Right.
Horses are still horses.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Are you a Malcolm Gladwell fan?
More or less.
You know his bid on 10,000, right? You do something for 10,000. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm a martial artist, a lifelong martial artist. Oh, and so the whole 10,000 hour thing, he actually took from Bruce Lee.
I did not know that.
That's it. The Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. That's where the 10,000 hours.
Really? Knowledge right there.
So he's basically a thief. He's what we're.
I will not call Malcolm Gladwell a thief. I will call him
inspired by Bruce Lee.
An inspired thought leader.
Yeah.
So how does that, is there an intersection between Bruce Lee's concept of 10,000 hours and skills? Is there any way to kind of put those 2 things together?
So I think there's understanding a skill as a common denominator to something or a pixel.
Right.
And then understanding what I as an individual need with respect to let's call it my contribution to the bigger picture. And what I mean by that is, am I looking at a skill in isolation as it relates to your 10,000 hour question? Or am I looking at the collection of my skills or my skill profile or passport in relation to that 10,000 hours? And I would say, if I had any advice for those folks that are sort of trying to understand skills, it's like focus on that collection of skills.
Right.
Because the work that you're doing over those 10,000 hours isn't solely going to contribute to one skill.
That's right. You want to be able to pull those things together. And again, spend 10,000 hours on that collection.
Right.
I love that. That's so awesome. My oldest son, Ryan knows his story, so he's heard it a million times, but he came home this summer. He was at Texas A&M, and he wants to build weapons, the weapons engineer. And so he came home, and he's so disenfranchised, loves the university, all that stuff, but he was doing more with AI in high school than he is at college. He's like, I feel like I'm going to graduate and be completely off base with what's going on in society. I need to study more about AI. So he committed 6 hours a day studying AI to understand kind of what is going on so that he can start to kind of collect those things and do some other stuff as well. But it's like he's getting out of college. He had a full ride.
Right.
He's getting out of college to study AI so that he can basically accumulate enough skills to then be marketable to an employer.
Yeah. So, if we're staying ahead of the curve on AI, so, obviously I've been at this racket for a long time. So the proliferation of AI isn't a thing for me in terms of shock and awe, right? Mm-hmm. If we look at the future beyond agentic AI, the next component of this is platform-enabled AI.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is that, and for all the listeners and watchers, what this means is, okay, I'm going to understand the base components of agents.
Right.
But now I'm going to be able to effectively build my own autonomous workforce to work for me. And now, what if I were in your son's position, I would be saying, well, what are the business models that exist once that's in place? Because getting that in place, that'll be 2 years from now, max.
Right.
Like, very few people understand this today, but I, just as a fun exercise personally, I developed an entire end-to-end talent marketplace in 4.5 hours on a weekend, complete full stack.
Right.
From design all the way through to database, infrastructure, API integrations, etc. Now, not a lot of people are onto that yet, but 2 years from now, that'll just be a thing. So
that's like prompting.
Right. So there's let's call it the technical skills that are required in AI, which is the 6 hours of studying that your son is doing. But then there's the innovative sort of human skill elements of, well, what are the business models? What are the vertical models? Like, for example, ask yourself a question. You have billions of websites. And if I'm a dry cleaner, how is my online presence going to change? Because my website's not going to be sufficient anymore.
Nope.
How are people going to find me? How am I going to promote myself?
Yeah.
So when you start to verticalize this and start to look at the business models that surround this, it becomes a fascinating field.
Right.
That even now today, the labor market's that's not even happening yet.
Right.
Forget AGI and stuff. I mean, this is platform-enabled AI for me is very exciting.
Oh, yeah. And again, once it's easy and people feel like they can do it themselves, you'll have people doing it and then modifying it, making it better, learning from it, etc. It'll be interesting to see who's first to market, because you'd think it'd be one of the big companies, Microsofts and Metas and Googles of the world. I don't know if that's going to be true.
Well, one of the interesting areas that we're seeing, if you, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So OpenAI announced a partnership with Shopify for platform-enabled retail. Then all of a sudden it came out that AWS or Amazon had already gone down that path. Microsoft's invested in that, and all of this around retail. And so clearly the light bulb has gone off for the big tech companies that retail there's a race to owning the retail platform-enabled AI space. And so for everyone out there, it's like, okay, what's next? Because the retail vertical's just been, there's attention being paid to the retail vertical.
Right.
The retail vertical's a big, big space.
It's big market.
How can people be participating there?
What's the most misunderstood or misconception about skills that you're saying?
Technical skills being first and foremost the most important thing right now in the labor economy. I'm constantly having to dispel this myth. So
it's interesting.
The number one most in-demand job, and I mentioned this yesterday, is personal home care aide.
Yeah.
And why? Because you have a big, massive baby boom, and there's a lot of people requiring a lot of help at home. When you look across the traditional roles that comprise any socioeconomic fabric in any community, teachers, social workers, nurses, healthcare professionals, construction workers, massive, massive labor shortages.
Right.
And what the world's not understanding is if we don't get our act together on those foundational socioeconomic elements, our innovation is going to slow down. All the other things that we're all, completely fixated on don't matter. Because if kids can't get an education, eat well, if we don't have, strong, healthy communities or bridges or roads to go anywhere or transportation and logistics,
can't go anywhere.
The rest of it really doesn't matter, does it?
You can code in Java.
Great. You can code in Java. Great.
Good for you.
You can't actually get a family doctor.
Yeah, indeed. We did a bit with them There's a 2025 jobs report, this, that, and the other. And they did the same bit. Ryan asked some questions because we hadn't looked at the report. And like, number one job, and from their perspective, right? And so we're guessing all kinds of stuff, prompting, all this stuff. And they're like, veterinarian.
Yep.
Yeah.
We just don't have enough.
Right.
Like they can name their like whatever, if it's rural or even if it's in the city, like you just can't get enough.
Right.
Plumbers, electricians, we've had.
Well, why is everyone focused on tech then? Like, why is this fascination here?
Because they're scared of being behind.
Yeah, I would think that there's this fear factor that exists of like, because when we hear about things like, well, AGI and robots are going to take over, et cetera. I mean, we've heard, for example, about autonomous trucking and logistics for how many years? We're still nowhere close, close. I mean, I would be surprised if in 20 years, I mean, if people go back to how long it took for seatbelts to become standard in vehicles.
Mm-hmm. A long time.
Fully autonomous vehicles? I don't know.
Yeah. That's interesting. So when folks are listening to you, I'm assuming that they get pretty overwhelmed pretty quickly.
I try to keep things, as call it consumable to the general public as possible.
So if you were to give them, again, I'm just an HR practitioner, CHRO of a mid-sized company, and I haven't really I've been fixing other stuff, compliance. We got some other stuff going on. My eyes have not been on skills. What's the first thing they need to do? Outside of call Cornerstone. Got it.
Before you build the house, before you do anything, you need a schematic design. And the schematic design is you've already got a bunch of goodness in your organization, whether you're 500 people, whether you're 500,000 people, there's data that resides everywhere, both whether it's in your system publicly, for example, with us, SkyHive by Cornerstone, we have 1 billion anonymized people profiles from the overall general labor market. We have, when we walk into a large organization, we'll know to about 60% fidelity what's going on within that organization before we've even met with them, just based on public information.
Right.
So the one piece is like, get the schematics in place to understand what it is you're trying to accomplish with skills, and only focus on the plumbing to get it to the point of being connected to something later. And that's
business objectives connected to something. I just want to make sure I understand connected to.
So the analogy is maybe not a good one. So let's just make sure that we have an understanding of what's going on already.
Right.
And an understanding of what it is we want to achieve with this moving forward. Because a lot of folks are fixated on skills for skills' sake.
Right. Skills-based hiring.
Right. And so what they're not focused on is this is a process of change management. It's going to require organization outside of just pure technology. It's also going to require, executive buy-in for the type of change that needs to happen.
The board of directors has to have a vision, has to see from the executive team. You got to get the executive team to buy in too.
Right.
Can't be just one executive.
No.
It's got to be all of them.
Right.
Because you can have the CEO, which is great, but if you don't have CFO or COO, you're in the toilet.
Right. Or a great example would be the CHRO and the CIO.
Right.
There needs to be a lot of alignment on those two roles.
Who was it that just combined CTO? Was that IBM?
No, that was
some company just combined HR and IT.
The pharma company. Can't think of the name.
Just pulled both departments together and said, "Yep, you're together now."
Wow.
It was a pharma company. I can't think of the name.
Oh, look it up. It was fascinating. The story was fascinating. I had recruiting more closely to marketing.
Microsoft has done it as well.
Yeah.
A lot of the large organizations are combining the two things.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks ask this about workforce analytics, but also intelligence. What's your kind of current take on workforce and intelligence, especially from a skills perspective? Like, you got a bit on that?
Yeah. So we've been very fixated as an industry on the visualization of data.
Yeah.
Right. And it kind of makes sense because, we've only really been in the big data space
not that long.
With the proliferation of cloud computing, let's call it maybe 7 years to 10 years.
Yeah.
And where I believe workforce intelligence is going is truly agentic and in the flow of work for who you are within the organization. So I don't necessarily...
Without you, with you, but like your shadow.
Like a digital twin.
Yeah.
But a digital twin based on a role-based or a set of skill-based. So
that's cool.
So if I'm a manager in a mid-level manager, I've got a team of 10. I don't really need to know, well, what are the average salary of so-and-so in another country. I don't need to know that. And I don't need to scroll through a bunch of data to try, to omit that data because it's not important to me to settle on one thing.
Right.
What I need is not just prompts, but I need an agent that's feeding me that information. Hey, did you know that, the seventh person on your team is probably undercompensated to the tune of about 10% based on averages of what's happening in the company or in this industry, et cetera. All of this, and again, that's the point on plumbing and making sure that the infrastructure is in place because let's call it front-end consumable elements of this are going to evolve so rapidly that the important part is the plumbing.
Right.
If the plumbing's not in place, then the information that you're going to be getting moving forward is not going to be useful.
Right.
So my view is right now, pick the best plumbing to make sure that when those fantastic elements come out of agents and other types of blended agent-to-agent type capabilities come out, that you have the right infrastructure in place.
It's funny with the plumbing metaphor. You grew up in Vancouver and Toronto. Y'all might not have these in where you live, but in Texas we have ranch style houses that are pier and beam. So the piers go down and then the beams come up and you're basically about 3 feet off the ground, your house. So the plumbing's all plastic.
Right.
So you can crawl, it's a crawl space. You can crawl under and it's easy to change the plumbing.
Right.
So as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about, well, if your plumbing's in concrete, that's going to be a little bit harder to change that plumbing.
Exactly.
Awfully expensive.
So keeping the plumbing, so find your plumbing, but also keeping it flexible enough to where you can modify or recalibrate it as you go.
Without a doubt. And you heard Himanshu and Karthik speaking this morning about this notion of non-jealous systems and Cornerstone Extend. And it's exactly for that reason. And from SkyHive's perspective, that's what I've been building since the very beginning, knowing that, plumbing was going to change, system of engagements were going to change, the stack of HR technology was going to shift. And we've even seen this over the last 5 years where traditional, what we would call core technologies are now taking let's call it more of a system of record position, and the systems of engagement